truly, I am really, really thankful to e-learning services that they put on the cohort process in the summer. I think that the greatest benefit we get from being a college is the collaborative work and the synergy and great ideas that we get from being together, from taking advantage of our proximity, so to speak, and exploiting it. Yesterday, I learned so much, and you'd think I would know it by now, but every time there's something new and some new perspective, and it's so really wonderful. And as Carrie or Angela was reminding us, we are small, but your future audience watching these video links, people really, really do. They really do go and check these links out and get good ideas from you. So your future audience is huge. And so we here represent regions. So Pete's going to start.
Okay, my name is Pete Van Mollem, and I'm in the business division. And I've been fortunate to have this opportunity a couple different times, so I appreciate the opportunity to be involved in the course development. And when thinking of a topic, I started looking at my courses and thinking what kind of creative things I've been doing. And I thought, you know, I don't think I probably have anything new. Really, honestly, don't have anything probably new that nobody's seen before. So I just emailed Angela and said, could I just talk maybe about kind of promo for QM and just say, I've done this a few times, and maybe I can just offer what I've got out of it. And so I kind of went back and said, how many classes have I actually done? So whenever I get a course for an online, I just immediately go to QM, and just immediately, that's how I develop my course. And it's approximately like 10 classes now that I probably have, and some in that format. And so I was not an early adopter necessarily. When I first found out about it, I was probably maybe like some of you, like, what is this thing? Why do I have to do this? Why would I want to be? Why do I want to feel like I have to be structured in a certain way? And so I was a little hesitant, thinking I needed more academic freedom. But then as I went through the process, I quickly realized a lot of the advantages that it brought. So what I did is I kind of went through and just came up with three things that I've kind of got out of it, and probably more, but the things that came the clearest to me. So the first one is really and again, I think you're probably familiar with this as those who are in the room who have done this, but it simplifies the course design. And when I say that, when I first get a class and it says I got to set up an online course, I can immediately do that, and probably not the whole thing, but in a sense in a weekend as far as outlining it pretty quickly. And so it really simplifies the course design. It's a quick setup. What's happened for me though, and it's not, I don't think it's a negative, but it's sort of, my classes are pretty generic. Maybe they're almost a little boring. And I think in a sense that they're not, I don't have a lot of bells and whistles. I don't do a lot of extra things. But I think what I've found is it's been really consistent for the students that have me for multiple courses. And I also think it's consistent if they're following other classes with the same template. And so there's not a lot of extra stuff, but I think it's pretty clear. And so that consistency is really important. It also allows in that setup and that design, I think, to use course resources from textbook companies. So I find in my face-to-face classes, I've gone away from textbooks quite a bit and try to do my own, more of my own stuff or more variety of resources. But with online, I've actually found that it's more beneficial to really tap into those course resources from the textbook companies, because they're starting to now provide some pretty good resources that fit the online courses, the learning management systems. So again, it becomes, I think class becomes more, I don't know if generic's the right word, or just more straightforward, more textbook-like. But I think that's sort of an advantage. It's something that I've found is as far as setting it up. It also keeps me focused on, the fourth point on this keeps me focused on the learning outcomes, which we know is important for assessment. And I found that that's been helpful for me. I'll be honest, in my face-to-face classes, that's not as an easy as connection for me personally. But in the online format where I see it each week or each couple weeks, I stay more focused on it. And it's more apparent to me if I'm probably meeting those or not, just on a day-to-day basis versus thinking about it from a semester standpoint. So simplify course design would be one key point. The other one would be, I think, provides a communication method. So we know it's a learning management system, but I also think we think of it as a communication system. And I've found that that's another strong component of it. I think if you can do a lot of the communication with the course directly through that design and that course, and it becomes, again, a consistent method to reach the students, and they get used to how that works in the process. And so, again, I think that's because of Quality Matters. I think it's because the template's there, and I think they can follow that. So it serves as that. And then the last one, I'll use an example here too to help this one, but I think it helps students be more resourceful, the actual Quality Matters. Because what I mean by that is I think we know we want students to be self-learners for life, right? We want continual learning. That's one of the goals I think, at least that's one of the goals I strive for. And I think in the online courses, they have to be a little more of a self-learner, and because we're not with them all the time. And I think with the template and with the system and making sure you follow all these guidelines, it really, again, makes that really clear to them, makes it easy for them to navigate the course. But also I think it allows for example, I use journal entries. Here's the example. So I use journal entries in my course, and it's a pretty consistent assignment. So over maybe, let's say I have 10 of them over the course of a 16-week class. That's one assignment I don't give a lot of personal feedback on. It's one I just if not at all. I'll use a rubric, and it's really, I've been adapting the rubric almost every time I teach the course or the different courses to try to make the rubric really strong. And what I've found, which is kind of interesting, is that what you'd hope for is that as they do the assignment, I grade by the rubric. If they're following their grade and they're looking at the rubric scores, they're adapting as they go, and the assignments are improving. And that's what we want, of course. But I'm not even giving, like, Sally, you did need to do this a little bit better. I'm not even giving personal feedback on that particular assignment. And just the rubric they're actually getting better. So I think, again, that's a part of the having consistent design and part of the system of following the Quality Matters format. So I'm a big proponent of it, as you guys know. But I just thought that would be a little different approach for me, since I don't have probably anything new and exciting that a lot of you have been doing. So.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Pete?
Sure. One, I think you sell yourself a little short. I think your courses are always worth looking at.
Thank you.
And so I don't know what people, I'm sure you his course, but you should ask him. I've seen some, and so you do have things that people benefit from looking at. But what would you say carries over into your face-to-face class from your experience online?
Good question. I would like to think it'd be the student learning outcomes would be where I would be maybe a little more focused on those. I don't know if that's really the answer. I think what I've found is that maybe I become a little more resourceful as far as, because I create content for the online course, and usually I have a face-to-face class that's the same class. Actually, today I have a class here I have to go into in a minute where I am using some of the exact same materials. So what I've been able to do, I'm always trying to be a little more up to date with the online. I think it's easier you need to be up to date with examples. You need to change those a little more frequently. I think it's easy in face-to-face and maybe not do that. So I think what it does is allowed me to add those current. It makes me stay a little more current. I think that's probably the best answer. Yeah.
I will say one of Pete's classes we used when Marlene Zenz and Aaron Page were coming to campus to talk. We actually used Pete's classes. They wanted a sample class from LCSC to look at before they came, and we used Pete's class. I don't remember which one. It was one of them. To let them take a look at, and they really appreciated the template. It was really easy to look at with people, and some other things. QM is just using that template and getting it in there where everything is organized.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. So since you've been using QM, have you noticed changes in your student course evaluations or
Good.
different kinds of feedback you've been getting?
The feedback, I don't know if it's changed a lot other than since I've been using it, yes. But since I've stayed with it over the last few years, I don't know if I've noticed a drastic difference. But when I first made the transition, definitely this course was easy to navigate. This course was, I could follow it really. That was probably the biggest adjustment. There really was and I never get questions, and I think I've said that before, and maybe a session like this, I just don't get questions on where to find stuff very rarely, ever. And that's probably the biggest, and that saves me a lot of time and the students, and I think that improves instruction too. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Pete.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Judith St. Louis, and I teach mostly addiction studies. So, and my presentation is entitled Using Group Discussion Blogs and Journals to Deepen Understandings. And Angela was very helpful in me coming up with this title, or actually she came up with the title. So I'll talk to you a little bit what that means specifically in relation to the course. The course that I have developed, I will not actually teach till spring of 2018. And it is addiction studies, cross-reference with psychology, 448 group approach, and chemical dependency. And I taught the course on ground last spring, and really I wanted to challenge myself to pick one, and I thought I couldn't do it possibly online. And so, and one of the reasons were all those wonderful things that happened in that circle as we were practicing to become facilitators and talked about change and personal change and the challenges around it. So I really thought, how can I capture the group process in a virtual classroom where we can't meet at the same time and where all these pauses and resistance in the air and all these things kind of get lost. So and are very important in the change process to capture for a facilitator. So in order to sort of wrap my brain around it, I thought, well, what do I want students really to know? What is important on different levels? Not all of the students that take ADS classes have to have a background in addiction studies. Some take it for the minor and they have a pretty solid background. Some have been going through addictions and recovery. Some, this might be the first addiction studies course they take. So I really want them to understand somewhat, something about addiction and how it works and the recovery process, which is a very hard and lifelong journey in many cases. So we talk about addiction models, especially the disease model, and having just the brain, the organ is most affected, as the only tool to help yourself out of the addiction. So that's why it's so hard. It's harder than retraining your leg using your brain, right? It's to retrain your brain that is damaged to retrain it, so it's very difficult, right? So I want to have students an idea of all these things, and resistance and fear around changing. Why is change so hard? It's most related to fears of losing something in the process. I talk about the symptomology and denial and relapse being normal parts of the addiction process, which we sometimes forget. And then I wanted them to understand the challenges around changing in general, habits, behaviors, patterns, even cutting down on something, cutting out Facebook for a month, right? Try that, or cutting out sugar, or something of that nature. It's very difficult. Then I wanted them to apply the course concept to their own change process. So I wanted them to change something for a month. So it's a 30-day challenge. I'll talk about it a little later. Evaluate their own stages of change, barriers that encourage the change, or what's in the way, what's in favor, their motivation level versus their self-confidence level. So, is that discrepancy there? Because if there is, it's going to be hard to change. And how do we get those levels up? CBT concepts such as looking at their own core beliefs, their opinions about themselves and others, and how capable they are, how worthy of change they are. All these things that are often in the way, right? And self-sabotage, end up in self-sabotage, and thinking, feeling, behavior connection, internal, external triggers that triggering us to fall back into old patterns. Self-permission statements, those inner dialogues we have all the time, do it, no, hang in, do it, don't, right, good, bad. And people in addiction talk sometimes about the angel and the devil on their shoulder in those inner debates. And we all have them if we want to change something. So I want the students to become really aware of those things so they can help their clients. Then considering the group format for recovery from addictions. What does groups of group format have to offer over other formats? How do I put together groups? How do I engage members at different readiness levels, of change levels? And then I wanted to somehow capture the group process in an online format, and also wanted them to witness the importance of a recovery, of peer support, and develop skills, recognize qualities, their own qualities and maybe lacks, as far as being a facilitator of change in a group environment. So all those are all parallel processes, and so I was thinking about what assignments could capture what. So I usually used group discussions mostly in the change and recovery process for the theoretical concepts, to discuss them further, to really think about them. And so I wanted to deepen the connection of the course concepts, but I also throw in a lot of practical tasks. So case studies, what would you do if so-and-so was in your group, she exhibited these behaviors, and what sort of therapeutic interventions or group topics would you pick, and how would you modify existing things we have in the workbook, and so forth. And then to capture the personal change experience on a more personal level, I use journals and blogs. And this is the 30-day challenge assignment. And last semester, or in the spring semester, people really challenged themselves and picked things that they really wanted to change. And now they had a good reason to do it. So adding exercise, diet, giving up Facebook, giving up something, adding more of a behavior. So we had a number of things people did that were very study skills, sleeping habits, those sort of things. So I have them do during those 30 days weekly journals where they kind of personally reflect on the successes, setbacks, and their thoughts, their emotions that they experience, the self-talk, seemingly irrelevant decision-making. That's one of the core concepts in relapse, right? I put myself in high-risk situations, sometimes unconsciously, and I find myself at the Dairy Queen meeting with a friend, and I think I'm just going to have a glass of water, right? But I put myself there, right? And oops, I'll have a little ice cream because I deserve it. It'll just be a bite, and then I have the biggest sundae, and I blew my diet, right? So sort of those things people were going through and experiencing. Also motivational shift. Some days I'm really motivated. Some days I said, what am I doing this for? And sometimes I say, what the heck with it, right? And so what keeps me going? And this is between me and the student, and that is not shared with the whole class. And then the blogs, I sort of thought about as thought of the day, right? So that will be shared with the group, and I hope that it becomes sort of almost like an AA meeting, support group, right? So, and then to facilitate the theories around group facilitation, I again use the discussions more for the theoretical parts on how to establish groups, what type of groups would we have many different type of groups for different reasons. And so again, but the experience of me being a facilitator is a different level, and for that I use different assignments, such as I have them go to a group and observe and write a paper, share it though, and we also make it part of a discussion. I found it really interesting what you found, right? So I want to use every assignment as much as possible for all those different levels. Blogs, again, providing and receiving peer group and support, feedback, journals for increasing self-awareness, self-understanding as a facilitator, and then the assignment that I have him do to actually do a group facilitation piece in a video and upload it, and then we all share it and give feedback. So I don't know if I have time to actually look at a piece. And here's my class. Yeah, that's a good thing. So I'm a little picky about discussion posts. So I gave examples of what I would like as far as citations go and even the feedback. Then I go in week 2, for example, where I have them start thinking about what they want to change and have them fill out a little quick sheet that I would actually give a client who is thinking about making changes. At the same time, we're already talking about a very important model, the change model. And so I capture that with the group discussion. And I also give a case example of how they can apply it. And then I have week 3, for example, where they have their first, they have a discussion again, a journal entry too. So now we are really digging into, you know, what I've been experiencing throughout the week and how, and then my thought of the day here that I share, the blog. So I kind of repeat that so they say, okay, this is the blog, this is the, thank you. So let me skip to the last one, and it would be week 13. We're talking about relapse, and so the group discussion is around relapse concepts. And then they turn in the group session, the assignment. And then in the last week, we're talking about, for example, specific issues working with the criminal justice population or in prisons, and what do groups look like there, and what are some of the challenges and issues. I have all articles for every week already in the folder, so they never have to look anywhere else but in the folder. And then there is the discussion again, and part of the discussion is to respond to the peer presentation demonstrations. So we again use the same assignment on a different level to all reflect on it and point out strengths, weaknesses, and learn from each other. So this is a good, hopefully a good first attempt, and we'll see how it goes. So thank you.
Thank you. Switching to the next one.
Judith, do you assign your students to working groups at all in the online course?
Not on this one, but that's
Okay,
something
so you're
that
just using the discussion as the opportunity. Okay.
there might be, you know, and I also kind of like he's gone, brought up about, you know, maybe the grading, having a rubric for some of the things, because I usually just sort of post it in the syllabus, but if I could have an actual rubric, that might actually be very helpful for a paper. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, guys, good afternoon. Michael Edgehouse. I'm an associate professor of biology. This is my first online course, and I would say that I was communicating with Angela on how to do this since I've never actually taught an online course, and I still am yet to teach this online course. I'm teaching it in the springtime, so I'm going to walk you through my thought process. It'd be really fantastic if I could open a Blackboard shell and stuff for you, but the reality is that's not there yet. The shell's there, but where it is not where it's going to be. So I'm going to walk you through my thought process, some of the research I did, and some thoughts I have. And underneath Associate Professor of Biology, total online newbie, as well as junior botanist from my field class that I teach. So I'm sure you guys already know this, but what is Quality Matters? That's a quote from the e-learning services website. Faculty-centered peer review process designed to improve the quality of online courses and online components. What it is, it's a service to us creating online courses. So what does it mean for us or me as a course designer? I got to design a course after attending a Quality Matters seminar. Some of my colleagues are choosing to design online courses without attending the seminar to have no time frame, et cetera, et cetera. That's great. I actually found it quite useful. I'm so green when it comes to online courses that it was very useful. I wish I would have gone to that seminar back in June or July, whenever it was, having attempted to put some things together. That way I could have had the computer open as it was being discussed in class. That would have really helped me. Then the course, after I designed it, passes through an informal review by the faculty chair. The dean then takes recommendations or doesn't from that faculty chair on if the course is approved or not. My goal was to turn my face-to-face anatomy and physiology course into an online format, utilizing best practices for delivery and retention. You'll see in a few slides that really the attrition rate for my courses is pretty high, and I'll explain that. So I've been consulting with Angela. She's walked me through some things. I still have a long way to go in designing this process. I'm really grateful that I don't have to teach it till spring, because ultimately I want my students to be successful in the online format. The ultimate goal for my class is to not be this magic entity sitting off in the cyber world, but to actually engage them right off the bat early and often. I want to open up an open discussion forum, because if you've ever sat in on one of my classes, which none of you ever have, I know Mary has peeked in a few times, but I run an extremely discussion-oriented course. I was fortunate to have my mom in town a couple weeks ago, and she sat in on my course, and she said she used to hate teachers like me, even though she only graduated high school, because I walk around the room and I'll stop at someone and just ask them what they think about any given thing. And I want to do the best I can to mirror that in my online course, although not completely applicable. There's ways we can get that. I want to provide my students effective feedback. And then, as we know from having to quit Facebook for a month for other courses and things like that, the cyber world's a black hole, so I need to manage my time wisely. I could see this very quickly taking 10 times as many hours as it does to teach it in a face-to-face format. So some things I do in the face-to-face that I'm going to try to push over to the online format. I have in-class lessons, extremely discussion-oriented. I'm going to use those as posted PowerPoints and audio files. Snag it. This semester I've been audio recording every single one of my lectures, and going through and picking and choosing what I'm going to add as an audio file. Not every slide gets an audio file, but most of them do. We have in-person labs. I've looked up and found a virtual anatomy lab, a virtual cadaver lab, as well as trying to figure out the class is technically listed as a hybrid course to do a face-to-face component, and I'm still discussing with the other A&P teachers how to actually incorporate that face-to-face. Do we have essentially a 5-day at the end of the semester kind of hell week, if you will, where they come in and they have to bust their butt? Or do we do it once before every exam so they meet 4 times during the semester? We're still brainstorming on the best way to deal with that. Exams will be the exact same. Proctoring Center, I was encouraged to give the students a 1-week time frame, which breaks my heart. I want to give them a 1-day time frame, but I understand that we can't do that. Office hours, how do I do office hours? I want to be present in discussion rooms for 1 hour a couple times a week. That way, there's an actual open format. I've had many students already call and say, hey, I live, in so-and-so, and there's no way I'm getting down. I have family members that are sick, blah, blah, blah. So I want to be present for them. So here's what happens in my face-to-face course and the online course. You can go through all of that in an effort of time. But what we see is that these assessments are going to be identical with the face-to-face and the online. After class in my face-to-face course, I give review things online. I provide it to them via Blackboard. I'll give them in-class quizzes, which I will give them on Blackboard, and virtual cadaver assignments. We're going to have 4 exams throughout the semester, both online and in face-to-face. I give them weekly reading guides. I don't specifically ask them to buy a book or anything. Books are $180, but I ask them to read certain topics, look at interwebs, look at different things. I'm going to ask them to do that in the online. I also give them weekly online assignments, both in the face-to-face, and they're going to be able to be carried over into the online format. The office hours, the 2 hours per week in person, I don't know if I'm intimidating. I know my reputation on campus is to be a bit of a hard ASS, but 2 hours per week online, I'm going to try to stick to that and be present in those discussion formats for them. So some things to consider when building an online A&P, and this is where I wanted to explain. My attrition rate any semester in the 7 years I've been here falls between 33 and 46% each semester, which sounds like an awful lot. But when you think about it, many of my students who do not pass or rather choose to drop the course, they're not ready for the sheer volume and content that I throw at them, oftentimes considered to be, the gateway. We have pre-health professionals, pre-nursing, pre-PT, everything else. And 252 is often, which is A and P1, the first class where, for lack of a better terms, they get smacked in the side of the head with a lot of information that is essential for them to carry, not just to the final exam, but to 253, to pathophysiology, to the other courses. So I looked up and did some research, and a study at UC Irvine in the Anatomical Sciences Education newsletter showed they had an average attrition rate of 23% in their face-to-face classes, and when they taught it online, it jumped up to 56%. So immediately my hackle rose, and I'm like, Jesus, if I lose more than what I already lose, I'm not going to have enough students, and it's not going to be a worthwhile endeavor. In addition to showing that huge attrition rate jump, the average grade decreased by 10%. Now, my average grade in 252, if those students that choose not to drop and just ride it out with an F brings it down, my average grade is around a 76%. If my average grade drops down to 66%, those students aren't moving up to a 253, the next in the sequence. So I need to figure out ways to prevent that. So with all that in mind and knowing that background, presenting that to students, why in the heck would a student take online A&P as opposed to in person? And what I've heard so far, and I've had many phone conversations, employment, the commute, the flexibility with their family. A few people have actually approached me, and they were completely honest, and I always appreciate honesty. They're like, well, it's got to be easier. It's online, right? People skip our pathophysiology in person and take Boise State's because it's easier because it's online. It takes a special breed. I'm traditionally hard because I want my students to understand which hole they're supposed to put the tube down when I'm in the nursing home and they need to take care of me, right? So A&P online is not easier. It's actually more difficult. So I need to be more approachable and make the material just as approachable, if not more to them. So how to design that course to mirror the relative success of my face-to-face that I have? The motivation for the students taking it is not different in face-to-face versus online. The motivation is there to move on in their careers. It's a pre-health requirement, et cetera, et cetera. That motivation is there, but the reasons are different. So the online course needs to have the same successful components. And what I found my successful components to be is group work. That causes the students to excel. Videos, expanded explanations, open discussion times, and examples. So what am I going to do to achieve it? It doesn't require a huge rewrite of my current course, but rather an expansion. So I'm going through every single one of my PowerPoint slides, and I had to switch back over to PowerPoint a few years ago from an entirely Blackboard format. But in going through and what I speak and discuss with my students, I'm writing down. And I'll give you an example at the end. But my current face-to-face model, I put a picture up, I walk around the classroom, I use hand gestures, I bring in board work, I bring in discussion, I give them relevant examples of how they're going to use that information in their future clinical processes. The proposed online model, they're going to be a picture. There's going to be extensive written explanation on the picture, and the slides I'm going to show you are not ADA approved yet, so please don't yell at me. There will be audio lectures. There's going to be significant board work. The stuff that I do a lot on the board, I have certain hour and 15-minute lectures where no slides come up. I'm taking pictures of the board. I'm videotaping myself to include that stuff on there. So some examples: major anatomical and function division of the nervous system. I talk about the brain and the spinal cord being the central nervous system and all the nerves being the peripheral nervous system, and how we have afferent, and A starts the word afferent, A also starts the word arriving, so that's your sensory system. The information arrives to the brain, and then the brain processes it, and it's efferent. E begins efferent, E begins exit, it exits, and you have a body's response to that. And it's a little bit of board work and a lot of explanation in hands. Now, what I have to do online is write all of that out and come up with hokey pictures that I steal from the internet that I will make sure I cite. The central nervous system includes, you can read it all. It's everything I basically said in a very boring format because you have to read it. And I know, again, ADA is not there yet. And then you come up with funny pictures to enhance all of that, right? And these are the kind of things that I would actually draw on the chalkboard, but I found pictures and I've taken my lectures and I've written them all out. And then finally, I give them those two, and then I'll come up with a third slide, and this is typically how my lectures work, The third slide is just a different way to interpret the previous two. Maybe they're not visual. Maybe they can't get central nervous system from a picture of a body. So I have to tell them the central nervous system is that. The functional nervous system is that. And then spend, just like I did with you guys, A and arrive, E and an exit, highlight certain things. Basically take an emphatic, things that I do in a lecture, and repeat words and things like that. Bring it to the blackboard, bring it to the PowerPoint so the students are able to do it and use it. The biggest challenge I'm going to have is making sure those clinical examples are there, because those are interspersed 3 to 4 times in every single lecture that I give. And I need to make sure that those are there. And I think the best way for me to deliver those is going to be in discussion forums and discussion rooms and whatnot. A question came up about group work because I have my students in class do group work. And yes, I'm going to try my best to assign them into groups so they have to answer group questions together and they'll have a canned group response. And I know students hate group work. I don't really care. You can't live in life without learning how to work with others. So that's where I'm at. I have about 2 more months till this thing goes live, and it'll be absolutely fine. I've been audio recording and working on scribing certain things, and like I said, it's been challenging. I was hugely intimidated after the QM seminar, but now that I'm taking it step by step, it's just revamping the current course, not rewriting the entire thing. Questions? Yeah.
Just wondering about that virtual lab.
So it's actually a virtual cadaver lab. So when you sign away your organs, you have the choice to be used for science. If you don't want to be a cadaver, you have to write on your license not to be used for science, just an organ donor. And then there's other special permissions that they actually are able to videotape the body. So it is literally a cadaver lab that the students are able to take their mouse and highlight over a muscle, and that muscle will pop up, and it's the flexor carpi radialis. The attachment is the medial epicondyle humerus. The insertion is the distal phalanx 2 through 4, and it'll show the action, virtually make the hand move, et cetera, et cetera. There'll be a virtual skeleton that highlights certain points. So that's the biggest challenge that we, meaning Heather Henson-Ramsey, Alex Bezarides, Lee Lotta, Dan, and myself, are trying to figure out if we're going to have an end of the semester 5-day boot camp where they come in, they have the virtual stuff all semester, and then, for lack of a letter, you just bust their butt for 5 days and get them to know the material, or you do it throughout the semester. And I'm trying to keep in mind both the best way to do it and what's going to be most feasible for the students, especially those that may be taking this class that don't live anywhere nearby.
Is the virtual app, is that a subscription or is that a free one?
I have it free for the spring semester to see if it works. I talked to the people. It's actually an app and a full-on on the computer screen. And they said, well, we do this. It's a pay for the students, et cetera. I said, well, I don't know what it's all about. I want to run it for a semester to see if I want my students to pay for it. So I have 1 semester free. Once they subscribe to it, if I choose to go that route, they get to keep it. And it renews itself, so they would keep it for 253 and for pathophysiology and their nursing schools, PT schools. So, yeah.
So what
Chris.
options have you come up with in terms of the students that are at a distance to bring them in, or anything that's possible?
I don't
So
know.
they're just like, no, it's not.
I'm still working on it. I mean, I let the ones know because on the course description, it says days to be determined because it's listed as a hybrid course, not a pure online course, because we didn't know how to do the lab.
The assumption is they're non-distance students in other classes.
Or no, there's no assumption of that. They may have to come in for 4 days, and that's my leaning towards is a true 4-day boot camp at the end of semester when the weather's better, et cetera, et cetera. But those are hurdles that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It's a real thing, yeah.
Any other questions for Michael?
I just don't want my cadaver to move.
Oh.
But it's kind of neat when you can make them move a little bit. Thank you, guys.
All right, so my name's Bryce Cameras, and I teach a lot of composition classes here at LCSD. One of the ones that we've kind of been introduced to in the past few years is English 103. It's the writing workshop. It kind of spun out of a developmental class that we used to offer, English 090. Had its own set of requirements, its own essays that students would actually complete before they got to English 101. So when adapting this writing workshop to the online environment, I had a lot of kind of conflicts that came up. In the in-person class, we do a lot of, let's say, think, pair, share type of assignments. We start with a daily reading, a response, a journal, and kind of a mini assignment. In addition to that, the only outside requirement, students are asked to come to at least 4 visits with the Writing Center and meet with the Writing Center tutor. That's not really feasible for the online environment. So enter online writing workshop. What they do, I'll take you through the class a little bit. Instead of the online visits, the visits to the Writing Center, they are asked to complete a series of projects. So you can see in my calendar here, they complete a resource portal, which is by and large really an annotated bibliography. They're asked to kind of collect a list of resources that will help them throughout the course of the semester. The second project is interview with a writer, where they will find a student, find a faculty member, professional author, and kind of pick their brain, if you will. The third is a vocab journal. So they'll collect vocab words throughout the course of the semester, define them, use them in sentences, and hopefully kind of build a better understanding of those terms. And then the last assignment is a writing reflection, where they kind of reflect on their experience in the class and then how they've grown as an author. Let me go ahead and take you through a little bit of the workshop here. So we have a like-minded syllabus in all of the 101 classes. We go through personal writing, informative writing, analytical writing, and then we end with persuasion. This class follows the same content, where every 4 weeks they're given a different unit, a different genre. So this class actually acts as a supplemental course to English 101. They take it as a co-rec. I have also kind of woven in a few sample essays where they rotate every 2 weeks. So for instance, you click on week 1, you will see that students are asked to read the student essay, what is that one called? Right or Wrong Identity, which kind of explores the feeling of almost feeling like you're a fraud when you're writing. So students will read this the first week, respond to it via journal, and then the next week we'll actually engage in an online participation, so a discussion forum. So I'll kind of give you a little primer of what we do here. The journal, for instance, asks, have you ever felt like a fraud when you have written an essay? What does your writing process look like? It's very intimate, it's very personal. When you go to the second week, it kind of opens up with more public resonance. So week 2 will look something like this. A good narrative should create some public resonance or accessibility for all readers. And so how does this author do that? How does he or she strive to kind of open up the essay, a personal essay, and kind of involve you? So through these series of assignments, students are not only asked to kind of respond personally, but then kind of think about the rhetorical techniques that are embedded in each of these assignments. Kind of a new thing I've been trying out in the writing workshop is using grammar quizzes as a kind of a support technique. A lot of the instructors in English 103 have been wanting to include more grammar instruction. So the way that I found to do this is through skill quizzes. So if you take a math class at LCSE, especially from Laura Bracken or Ed Miller, you're going to encounter skill quizzes. What they are is usually a set of 3 to 5 questions that will ask you, use the Pythagorean theorem to solve blank, or using this knowledge, solve the equation for x. And students are asked to complete about 8 of these throughout the course of the semester. And they are given unlimited attempts, so long as they make a valid effort. I wanted to try the same thing in the composition classroom. So every few weeks, students are given a new grammar quiz, a sentence level grammar quiz on a new topic. And these topics come from the Norton series. So if you buy a Norton text, Norton field guide, everyone's an author. These are the same series of questions, the same sentence level errors. So let me go to one of these here. We'll go to week 3. So students are asked in this one to do a little background reading on comma splices and then fused sentences. After they do that reading, they're asked to complete the following skill quiz. And actually, I'll just show you what that looks like. Like a few of you, I have actually come to rely on some of the sources from these textbook publishers. And one of them concerns test pools. So you'll begin the quiz. In my in-person classes, these actually aren't multiple choices. I will give students sentences and they have to correct them. I give them enough blank space to add a comma here or capitalize a word there. But in this online format, it's just easier to have Blackboard do the grading for you, to use its leverage to give students instant feedback. So just kind of going through here, I expect to fail this. Hopefully I don't nail it the first try. You'll submit it. Students are often going to see, okay, here's how long it took you to complete the exam. You click on OK here. 2 out of 5 points. I ask students to complete these with at least an 80% completion rate, and that earns them a passing grade on that skill quiz. I'll try this out for a semester and maybe bump it up to 100%. I may even bump that 5-question quiz up to 10. I'm going to feel it out for a bit. But this is helpful for students if they know that they have to have an 80%. That's 4 out of 5 questions. However, I want something a little bit more definite. I want them to be able to click on that quiz and for it to say, you need to retake this or you're done. So let me show you actually what I see. So if I go to my grade book, that sample quiz that I just took, it's going to actually read incomplete, 40%. And how I was able to do that was with a special grading schema. You see I have another one already completed here, where with an 80% completion rate was able to pass the class or pass the quiz. So it reads complete. I find that these are a little bit more helpful for students. They are not going to see 80% and say, all right, is he really going to make me retake that quiz, or going to see 60% and think that maybe I'm a softie and going to let it slide, right? So it gives them definitive feedback, immediate feedback. I've given you a handout here on how I think that we can maybe build some better assessments and better reporting tools. Blackboard has built within it a pass or fail grade. It actually is called complete or incomplete. However, it's a little trickier. When you actually go to take a quiz under that grading mechanism, regardless of how you perform on that quiz, it's going to tell you that you completed it because you made that attempt. So for instance, I have one that is defaulted to that. I'll go ahead and click in there and show you what that would do. So this would be week 15, I believe. This one concerns shifts. So just kind of rushing through. I think there's one I skipped, but it'll be fine. When students actually go and visit the My Grades tab, it's going to kind of lie to them. It's going to give you a green check mark, and it's going to say you completed that quiz. But that's really not the most helpful mechanism for measuring these quizzes. If you want students to kind of obtain mastery knowledge, I think that we should give them more clearer instructions, incomplete, complete, and tell them to retake if needed. So this has been kind of what I've been working on for the past few weeks, past few months actually, in trying to get more immediate and clear feedback to students, things that they can easily discern whether or not they have to repeat material. Any questions? Yeah.
When you have them retake it, you can mix the questions up in a different order, or you use totally different?
I use a testing pool from Norton Field Guide, and they probably have about 75 questions per chapter. I randomize those questions, and so each student theoretically is getting a completely different quiz. And then in addition, I have a random order assigned to each of those quizzes. So then goal is to kind of prevent cheating. I did throw a few of these questions into just Google, copy and paste the prompt, and they don't seem to be readily available online. So that's one of the things I was looking for in a good testing pool. Yeah, in addition to that, I limit my students to 3 attempts, and then if I find that they're rushing through, I'll maybe see how many minutes they spend on a certain quiz. I have written into my syllabus that they are then required to complete it at a testing center or in a proctored environment. which I think is helpful for people who are looking to game the system.
Any other questions for Bryce? All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Last but certainly not least. Exactly.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Last one for the
So-
thing. We'll go ahead and let you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's been inspiring just to watch everybody else's presentations and making mental notes for a lot of things. This was also my first online development of a course, and I have taught other courses online, but it was really good for me to kind of narrow things down a little bit, simplify maybe. I'm a professor in movement and sports sciences. Still getting my tongue around that sometimes. In math, the new division, and one of my specialty areas is actually kinesthetic instruction. So I love to move, and I have a really hard time not doing that. And so sometimes it's tough for me to envision some of my classes being taught online. But as a great challenge, Heather encouraged me to develop the introduction course, Kinesiology 260, in an online version. So I haven't taught it online at all, and I've only taught the face-to-face version one time too. So I'd still love to dig into it a little bit deeper in terms of maybe teaching it another time face-to-face and then developing it more, but you know, who knows how things go. Anyway, so the thing that I decided to look at was how do I introduce video, because for some of my classes they are very kinesthetic, and so trying to do that in an online format is challenging. And so I was looking at the video component of this course to see what we can do. So the hurdles that I saw coming into it kind of initially had a little bit of a closed mind to it. I mean, not completely, I was trying to be open, but this is going to be hard. So I saw, okay, so eventually we need to have all of our video captioned for the sake of ADA. So that was something that I saw, wow, how am I going to do this, especially in some of the context, which I'll explain later. So that was my first reaction, that this is going to be a lot of work to get it developed. And I hear some of the Michael's ideas, I'm like, yeah, that would be so fantastic. And I'm thinking hours and hours and hours. So these were kind of the things that I thought about. So either I drop the video and lose some creativity, which is tough for me because I tend to be more of a creative thinker and love to do things that are different and unique, or figure it out. And so that's kind of where you just need to dig in and do what you can do to make it happen. So this was my pathway. I wanted to have a sound effect going, oh, you know, but it didn't happen. So yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I feel like the content's pretty simplistic, but hopefully it'll be something that will add some new knowledge. So one of the pathways was, you know, find a video that already had closed captioning with it. Sometimes you can do that, and that I'll show you kind of an example of that here in a minute. Another pathway could be transcribing an existing video. I have for one of my other courses, which is Elementary Methods of Physical Education. I've been videotaping me teaching that class, and it's very, very kinesthetic. I spend very little time just talking to the students. They're moving through activities. And so I've been trying to feel like I'm beating my head against the wall sometimes to provide that in an equal type of a class online. So I've been trying to figure out how to do that. So that's one of the methods that I've been working on. And then another one, which Angela is not trying to convince me, she keeps saying it's better to write a script and then do the video. I'm trying really hard to be open about that, but sometimes it's hard for me to kind of envision that because sometimes I feel more my creative best when I'm not tied to a script. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around what would that actually look like. So I'm still willing, I'm trying that, but this is where we're starting. So pathway number one. So this is a page from a PowerPoint that actually Heather Van Molen created. She's taught this class many, many times, and I really love the example of the Hawaii Warriors football, haka, I think is how it's pronounced, right? Are you familiar with that? I mean, I'll show you a little bit. Okay, yeah, well, the blacks, yeah, they do that as well. But anyway, so this is just an example I want to show you for what we're going to do. So for this, hopefully it'll play for me. football teams. There's one in Southern Idaho. There's a football coach that told me he's willing to do it, but to prompt for this, which I think would be great too. But it does the hockey. That's great. So I'm going to stop at that just to kind of show you. Okay. Thank you. No, perfect, perfect. So anyway, so that video obviously doesn't have closed captions. So if you were to try and just do it verbally based on what they're saying, it'd be a lot of Hawaiian that I don't understand, and you know, a lot of yelling and all of that. So it's probably not appropriate in terms of what I would use for that. So what I did is, Google's kind of my friend, but I looked up how do I find something specifically on. I'm just going to use YouTube for an example. There's other resources, but I mean, initially I spent a long time, and you're right, the online is a black hole, and you know, I can get off on, oh, that's cool, and so how do I streamline sorting it based on what has closed captions already, because I'm looking for a certain topic, but I want to find out what has closed captions. So I went to the how do I do this, it pulled it up. So kind of simplistic, but hopefully it would be helpful to you. So initially it pulled up this. There's some that happen like in a wedding and all kinds of different sites, but maybe not the one I was looking for. So what I can do is I can go up to right here where the arrow is, and initially when I put in the search, then I can go to the filter, and then when the filter opens up, I can click on subtitles in terms of how they're going to sort it. So then what I did is then this one came up, which hopefully, well, actually it won't play probably, so I'll go on to the next thing. But when I sorted, then that was, boom, that was in my top 3 immediately in terms of the ones that actually had subtitles. So I'm going to pull it up again. Do I end show?
The UH football team has brought a bit of New Zealand culture to this season. The haka is both a chant and challenge. Its dance can be used to express anything from joy to courage, and the Warriors intend to do it for every game. Steve Uehara has more as he takes us under the helmet.
It's drawn mixed reaction everywhere. The fans at Alabama, for instance, booed. Boise State fans cheered on. But quite frankly, the Warriors don't care. The haka is for them, not anyone else. The big question is, what does it mean?
That you're all coming together as one and you're going to fight somebody else. You know how every day you're going up against each other and you just bring each other together and going into battle against one.
Most of all, you're asking, for assistance, from like your ancestors. That's why we do it, because it gets us going and it gets the other team mind boggled, like, what the heck are they doing over there, man?
The haka was actually performed by the Maori people to summon the help of the war god before going into battle. And just like the UH Warriors, they used it to promote unity and intimidate the enemy.
It's meant to prepare us and get us ready, spiritually, intellectually, and physically, for the game.
The idea of adopting it came from Tala Isera and Leonard Peters, who wanted to do something special.
The thing that was meaningful to me is that you can see a little bit more in it. So maybe the initial video might, if you were just looking at it and not hearing what was going on, give you that huge intimidation factor. But when you flip to the other one that has a little bit of a descriptor in the closed captions of this is why we're doing it, it's not actually intimidation, that kind of thing. So in terms of what I want to do in the future, and as this course is being developed more, and also like the elementary methods class that I'm trying to take actual video of my own teaching and apply it to it. I found this little clip, and I won't show the whole thing, but basically it gives you in about a minute, step by step by step, how to pull up a video that maybe I downloaded to YouTube, and then you can pull up a caption that shows how to put the script in. So maybe I would just put pieces of the script in, because as you can imagine, when I'm teaching on or face-to-face, students are speaking, I'm moving around between them and those kinds of things, and I want to be able to capture that somehow, at least for the online students to be able to see what we're doing if I'm trying to ask them to use movement as a teaching methodology. So I'm going to get a really quick little demonstration, Michael, if you wouldn't mind coming up. So for example, one of the things I want to try and get my students to be thinking about is, are you teaching physical content with movement? So if we're going to do the two terms, counterbalance and countertension, maybe what I would do is I would say, okay, make a B in sign language. Everybody can do that with me, yes? And then put your fingers together and push. That's counterbalance. So if I'm going to do it face-to-face, our feet are going to be here. Put your hands out and push on me so that when we come together, we fall over. Go ahead and trust me, I won't make it. Okay. There we go. So that's counterbalance, right? We're balancing each other. If either one of us let go, we fall down. So countertension, make a T with your hands. Okay, now grab and pull. That's countertension. So we're going to grab, put our feet closer together, and lean out. Right? And if either one of us would go, right, we'd fall. So, I mean, that's an example of something that I could show physically on a video, and hopefully students can try it out at home as well and get that connection that way. So, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Good work.
So this is just kind of the other direction that Angela's trying to encourage me to move towards in terms of writing the script first, video record, copy the transcript, then into that. And I've been working with the video editing Camista. Am I saying that right? Camtasia, thank you, Camtasia. So that I can edit those videos and then plug those things in and then spread them out in terms of where I want the words to go. And so, yeah, I think it will be slick once I figure all the steps out, so I'm still kind of in process for that. But I've moved away from this is way too much work to it can be done, I just need to take it piece by piece in terms of encouraging it. So it could apply to any of the classes that I'm doing. So, easy, right? Happy Thanksgiving, yes. So thank you very much.
Is there any questions for us? Or questions in general, since we're kind of wrapping up this session for today?
Well, in a way, the little demo you just did with your Vanna, turning the numbers, was kind of, you scripted it, practiced it.
Right.
In a way, you are using that method.
Right.
A little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I was initially thinking is if I were to physically transcribe every single word, which is what I'm used to, like from my PhD when I was doing some of the work that I did for one of the studies, there's a lot of extra things going on. Students are commenting, they're laughing, which is what I want in a face-to-face class for sure. And so it's been really tough to figure out how do I allow the online students to have kind of that same immersion experience where they're physically doing it. And it's one of the reasons for my question to Michael of, I'd love to have them just for a couple days to physically do it with me so they can kind of wrap their head around how do I teach with movement versus just talking at kids. So.
Thank you, Crystal.